The doorbell rings once. Sharply, too loud in the hush. The hallway light flickers as the person standing just inside forces the door open. But instead of stepping through, they press one palm flat against the frame and slide their fingertips across the peeling paint, leaving a streak of dust. They say nothing. They only exhale, and the air changes, as if the silence itself recoils. Why that door? Why that touch? Why their breath now? Inside, the apartment hums in the accustomed low-key key of a weekday evening. A pot of chamomile steams on the stove as Marnie stirs in a thin slice of honey, the spoon catching the light from the single bulb swinging gently above the sink. The doorbell's echo still lingers in the wires, a little too bright against the muted thrum of the radiator. She doesn't rush to the hallway. Instead, she moves through the rooms with her usual quiet deliberation, checking the corkboard by the desk for the grocery list, folding the clean dishcloth draped over the faucet. Outside, the corridor settles back into its soft shuffles and distant elevator chimes. Inside, Marnie slides the kettle onto the coaster, flips through the dog-eared book on the counter until a tomato timer chimes. She sets it gently beside her glasses, then lifts the mug by its handle, letting the steam warm her fingers before carrying it over to the window. Through the glass, the building across the way matches her pace. Curtains drawn, a cat dozing on the sill. The ordinary cadence of the evening. The tick of the clock, the scrape of her chair as she settles, reasserts itself, reaffirming the quiet pattern she inhabits night after night. Steam curls off the kettle while Elena leans against the counter, her elbow tapping a rhythm that matches Lila's clipped breathing. I asked him to take the late shift on Friday, Lila says, sliding a sticky note across the counter. The ink reads, "Need a hand with grocery pickups." He read it, then nothing but a blue dot on the message screen for 4 hours. She taps the counter twice. The pot rattles in reply. She scrolls through the thread anyway, like proof that asking is something she's done. There's that reply from yesterday. "You keep turning simple things into confrontation." And then radio silence, while the living room light stayed on and he pretended not to hear the microwave beep. Elena reaches for her hand, but Lila pulls away. The tremor in her fingers settles into a tightening around the mug. The clock blinks 8:12 when her thumb hovers over the keyboard again. "If you can't swing by Friday, say so," she types, then deletes it. She starts a new message. "I need you to handle the pickup. I already have 2 calls that night." She hits send. The read receipt swings from delivered to nothing. The apartment stays quiet, except for the refrigerator humming. She lifts the mug, breath ready to spill words, when the door clicks in the lock. Jordan walks in with the weight of the day already parked on his shoulders. He taps his keys on the table and doesn't look up. "You okay?" she tries, voice soft enough not to trigger the look she knows is coming. He shrugs, tightens his jaw, and heads straight into the bedroom without answering. Lila steps forward anyway, then stops. She opens her mouth to say, "I really need..." But the air catches. She sees him pause in the doorway, the corner of his mouth barely twitching into something that isn't exactly anger, but isn't calm either. She lets the words fall back into her chest and stands still. The door slams shut before she can pull another sentence together. The slam reverberates through her ribs, but the apartment is quieter than before. Elena sets the dish towel down and moves to the chair beside her. "Tell me if you want me to stay for a while," she says. And the offer isn't a lecture. It's the only solid thing in the room. Lila nods, her shoulders sinking. She leans into Elena's side, the pressure of the hug relieving a little of the tightening in her throat. When they sit, Elena pulls out the grocery list, and Lila scribbles a column of stores she can hit herself. She lets out a breath, long, slow, and the habit of holding it in, waiting for permission, loosens for just a second. Lila leans against the kitchen counter, fingers rubbing the edge of a steaming mug. Jordan sits at the dining table with his laptop closed, arms crossed over the screen, eyes fixed on the grain of the wood. She slides the grocery list toward him and sets her voice flat. "I need you to take the Friday pickup. The app confirms you can." He doesn't look up. His jaw tightens, and the silence thins until she can hear the hum of the refrigerator. She lifts her chin, forces a smile that doesn't reach her eyes. "You're doing that again," she says, softer, making sure each syllable lands. Silent punishment doesn't change anything. The papers shake when she pushes them a little harder. Jordan's hands bunch, but he doesn't react. After a long beat, he stands, collects his coat without a word, and steps toward the bedroom door. Lila's throat closes. She starts to follow and then stops herself mid-step. She watches the door swing shut, hears it click twice as if final. She presses both palms flat against the counter, the wood cool under her skin. Her voice cracks, but she keeps it steady. "Okay," she whispers to the empty room, then swallows the rest. No demand. No explanation. She lets the weight settle. She pulls her phone from the drawer and opens her friend Mira's chat. Her fingers tremble over the keyboard. "Grocery pickup, Friday." Jordan's silent again. She types, then deletes, then types. "Need another set of eyes on this." He left. She hits send before she can second-guess herself. The notification bubble pops up. Mira's quick reply appears before Lila can even breathe. "Should we switch you to delivery? Need a hand?" That tiny acknowledgement loosens the knot in her stomach. She folds the list in half, slides it into the drawer, and grabs her keys. The apartment feels too tight. The hallway air still smells faintly of his cologne. She tells herself she is just going to the corner store to clear her head. But the motion is also a reminder. She can still move, still make another plan even when the conversation stays locked in silence. As she steps into the hallway, she hears Jordan's bedroom door open behind her. His footsteps pause. His shadow lingers in the doorway. She doesn't look back. She pulls the doors shut behind her with a quiet click and heads down the stairs. The cool air outside a sharp contrast to the charged humidity inside. The community center door sticks a little before giving way, and Lila slips inside with her tote, notebook pressed to her ribs. The fluorescent lights buzz above folded chairs, and a volunteer in a gray hoodie is setting up a laptop and a speaker. "You're just in time," Maya says from the second row, waving her hand across the empty seat beside her. The volunteer taps the screen, and a recorded interview fills the room. The expert's voice is steady but sharp. Silent punishment isn't just a mood swing. It's emotional imprisonment. The person withholding response builds a walled-in space, claiming care while tightening every border. Lila's pen hovers over the first line of notes. She watches the corners of Maya's mouth tighten, the same way Jordan's jaw tenses when he leaves the room. The silent partner controls distance by defining whose needs count. The interviewer presses on, and the volunteer turns the volume down slightly as people nod. After the clip ends, the facilitator invites questions. The room smells faintly of coffee and lemon cleaner. Someone exhales twice in quick succession. Lila raises her hand, throat tight but steady. "When silence happens, I keep shrinking," she says, and hands in the room shift. "It feels like I'm not allowed to take up air, even if I'm breathing." The facilitator leans forward. "What does that shrinking look like for you?" Lila looks at her own hands, knuckles white, the pen cap loose between her fingers. "It's a box I didn't choose," she says. I start pacing around the edges, waiting to make a mistake so I can avoid the next slam. Her voice rises a notch. A high tension lingers in the air as Maya's shoulders stiffen beside her. The expert called it imprisonment, but I've been thinking maybe it's how Jordan keeps me contained without ever naming it. The words land with a quiet thud, her notebook absorbing the tremors of the moment. "You're naming what you live," Maya says softly, and slides a folded worksheet across the seat. Lila unfolds it to reveal prompts about boundaries and safety plans. She traces the word imprisonment with her thumb, a small payoff. A concrete term she can hand to herself whenever the next silence drops. The facilitator nods toward the worksheet. "You can add your own definitions," she says. Realizing the containment has a name is the start of seeing how far the walls go. Lila closes her hand around the pen, the tip scratching the paper as she writes in large, deliberate letters. "Myself can't speak when the walls close." The act of writing feels like stepping through a door she hadn't noticed before. Outside, the hallway lights flicker, and she can hear the low hum of traffic, a reminder that space beyond the room still exists. She exhales, not with a sigh, but with the release of air finally allowed to move. Lila stands with her palm on the bedroom door, knuckles lingering long enough to feel the cool wood under her pulse. "Jordan," she says, voice steady, "I need your attention for 5 minutes. I finish the grocery run. I set the table. I go to Maya's study group. None of that matters if you vanish again. I'm not asking for permission. I'm asking for a boundary. If you close yourself off, tell me before it happens, or tell me when you're ready to talk. Silence is punishment, and it's pushing me out of the room." The door stays shut. No footsteps. He keeps breathing like he always has when he is inside, but unreachable. The airways between them hum with the vacuum he's created. Lila inhales, lets the sound fill her chest. Then she moves her hand, presses harder, not to force it open, but to feel the resistance and still remain. "That's enough for today." Maya nods, and the silent agreement on the screen is a soft return. She confirms the boundary in the only way she can. Lila feels the ache in her jaw ease just a little. Footsteps shift inside the bedroom. A dresser drawer thuds closed. She listens, clamps of tension in her calf muscles. Jordan's shadow appears in the doorway, face unreadable. He doesn't come out. His eyes trace the workbook, then land on Lila. She doesn't reach for him. She stays there, palms loose in her lap. She doesn't ask if he's angry. There is no invitation. He takes a step back and the door clicks shut. Silence again. Only this time, the silence doesn't swallow her. It is sharp, but she holds her breath, counting the seconds, letting the fact that she had spoken float around her like frosted glass. Maya stays on the line, the small revolver of her thumb working across the screen, waiting until Lila ends the call herself. When the screen finally goes dark, Lila unfolds her legs, standing. She picks up the workbook, flips back to her handwritten notes. She slides the page into a folder labeled Boundaries. The action, the quiet filing, feels like a payoff. She has set a boundary, he has retreated, and she has not dissolved into the retreat with him. It isn't a resolution, but it is a change in her motion. She closes the folder, grabs her keys, and steps toward the door. She doesn't run after him. She opens it, clicks it shut behind her, and walks toward the hallway, toward the world outside the apartment and toward Maya's studio across the street. That is her next action, and it is hers alone. The studio door creaks open before Lila can ring twice. Maya stands behind a low table layered with paint-streaked journals, palms already reaching for the tote as Lila drops it. The room smells like lemon oil and wet paper, a contrast to the stale hush of her hallway. Lila sets her boundary notes beside the kettle, fingers brushing the margin where her handwriting collapses into a jagged list of Friday night silences. "I kept thinking if I stayed quiet, he'd come back," she says, sliding the sheet toward Maya. But every time the door shut, the list just got longer. Maya nods, uncapping a pen. Without waiting for permission, she begins drawing a timeline across the page, pinning each episode next to the clock time and the exact words Lila spoke before the vacuum. Lila watches the outline fill, hearing her own words in a new rhythm that matches the stillness outside. "This fractured self isn't only in my head," Maya murmurs, tapping the margin where Lila wrote, "I disappear while he's gone." It's the muscle memory of containment. Let's say it out loud. Every silence you've lived through is real, and you can point to it. Lila lifts her chin, the muscles around her jaw tightening. She traces one night where Jordan slammed the bedroom door and another when he ignored the grocery text, whispering each date in turn as Maya scribbles. "It's not just that he leaves," Lila says, voice caught on the next breath. "He leaves, and I start checking if I deserve the space." Maya slides a small recorder across the table. "Tell it to this voice memo. Then we play it back and see if the feeling shrinks at all." Lila presses record, keeps her eyes on the window, and lets the words tumble. He goes quiet. I get small. I tell myself it's my fault. When she stops, the recorder clicks. Maya plays it back. Hearing herself, Lila doesn't soften the next sentence. She doesn't edit it. The line between what she feels and what actually happened feels sharper. Maya taps her phone and opens a group chat from the community session earlier in the week. "Let's pull in some outside witnesses," she says. She types a quick message. "Jordan's silence tonight matched the pattern we've been tracking. I kept my boundary and left the apartment." Within minutes, a string of replies comes through. Practical confirmations, a prompt about journaling the physical cues, a friend asking if Lila wants someone at the next support call. Lila reads them aloud, each reply a steadying beat. Maya highlights a weekend workshop called Courageous Dialogue. "You can watch it with us on Saturday, then we'll debrief what doesn't feel like yours to carry anymore," she adds. Lila clamps the notebook shut, new boldness lining the corner of the page where she will tape it to the door frame before leaving. Before Lila stands to go, Maya pulls a small card from the table. "Write down one question to ask Jordan when you check in on Monday. One he has to answer, no silence allowed." Lila scribbles, hesitates, then writes, "Can we agree on a signal for when silence is okay and when I need to hear you say you'll be back?" She hands it back. Maya folds it into her pocket. Outside, the hallway hums with the distant thump of the upstairs radiator, a reminder that the apartment is still breathing around her. Lila tucks her bag strap into place, feels her shoulders lower just enough to make room. The door closes behind her, with the soft click of someone finally deciding to walk away from a vacuum, not to ignore it. Lila spreads the workshop worksheet across the counter again, the words "emotional imprisonment" underlined 3 times. She copies the phrase onto a fresh, sticky note. "When silence shuts me in, it becomes emotional imprisonment," and tapes it beside the intercom. A reminder to herself, not a plea for him. Her hand moves faster when she writes the boundary steps. "If there is no two-way response between now and 9 p.m., I leave to Maya's studio for community work. No chasing. I will trust the pattern I mapped." She runs a finger down the list. Hearing Maya's voice from last night, saying those same words, letting them sink into the air between the fridge magnet letters. The front door clicks. Jordan stands in the hallway, coat half on, eyes flicking to the table but not landing long enough to meet hers. Lila leans on the counter, the sticky note still in view, and calls, "Jordan, I need you to hear this now." He doesn't answer. She keeps her voice level. "The silence you wrap around me after I ask for communication feels like being shut in a room with no exit." That's what the expert described as emotional imprisonment. I am refusing to stay in that room without a door. I need a response tonight by 9. Or I'm going to Maya's studio to stay connected with people who hear me. I will not keep shrinking to match your wall. He looks away, closes the gap between coat and shoulder, and says, "I need time." The words are soft, but they slam with the same force as his door used to. Her pencil taps the boundary list for a moment, then she picks up her backpack, leaves the notebook open beside the timeline printouts, and begins to pull on her shoes. He turns toward the bedroom, his steps slow, then stops. "What if I just can't talk?" he calls, almost pleading. Lila takes the hallway light switch, turning on the lamp so she can write in her planner later. "Then I'll take the time you can't give me and spend it where conversation happens," she answers, her fingers already typing a message to Maya. "If silence stays, I'm heading over with the green notebook. Stay with me in that room where words don't disappear." She closes the door to the living room gently behind her so she doesn't slam it into the sound of his retreat. The slam that follows is loud enough to reverberate down the hall, but she's already halfway down the stairs, her breathing even, feet taking the steps she chose. Outside, the air catches a breath from her lungs. Her phone buzzes before she hits the sidewalk. "Maya, I'm at the studio, so are we doing the boundary run-through tonight?" Lila replies with a thumbs-up emoji and adds, "I used the exact words from the worksheet." Maya writes back, "That's the language that moves things. Keep holding it." On the corner, the community chat pings her again. Someone posts a short poem about doors that open when you stop waiting at slammed ones. Lila's fingers hover over the message thread, then type, "We're rehearsing response windows tonight. I'll report back." She feels the next step already forming. Reporting back, naming what silence does. But right now, her steps lead her to Maya's studio. Leaving the doorway she refused to stand at any longer. She presses the sticky note with the borrowed words against the intercom one more time, feeling the tack of the adhesive, then slips her hand away when the door stays shut. The silence on the other side has no answer, only the weight of the pattern she can now name. So she turns the knob and lets the hall air take her. Her text to Maya is brief, a single line that says she is leaving, and the door clicks closed behind her with a finality that rolls through the hallway like a held breath. At the studio, light pools over the pieces of the map they have drawn, the dots and arrows now a trail to follow, not a trap. She lays the question she has smoothed into paper beside the recorder that still holds the tremor of her own voice, describing the silence. The tape of their shared workshop invitation rests in her palm, a tether to the community she reached for before the door shut. She steps to the window and watches her reflection stand firm yet unfinished, the city humming beyond. And she lets herself imagine the next conversation she will bravely begin, knowing there is no going back to being quiet about what that silence did.